Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things Florida real estate on how you can take your company to the next level. On my show today, I have super mom, super title CEO, super everything in the world of real estate. She is an amazing person. When we first connected, she had all of the stuff ready about real estate. We were hitting it off, all real estate stuff. Her name is Leah Miller. She is the CEO of J. Riley Williams PLC here in Jacksonville, Florida. And they have offices in different locations in all of Jacksonville. And I have her on the show, and we are going to dive in on so many different title things, title issues, weird things. And she's going to talk about it, different stories that have happened. So without further ado, Leah Miller, welcome to the show.
Hey, Al, thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. It's been a while. We were trying to connect and
Yeah.
get you on, and she is so busy. And at the same time, she is being able to come on the show, talk with me today. Leah, many of people out there, realtors, know who you are. You are popular in the realtor world. You are at the NEFAR meetings. You're
Yeah.
everywhere when you do the NEFAR stuff. You're at the council things. Tell everybody who you are, what got you here, and what are you all doing today?
Yeah. I have been working for Riley pretty much since he started his company back in 2004. I actually have a degree in broadcast news from the University of Georgia, and I was living in Atlanta after college, just working for an advertising company, and decided that Jacksonville seemed like a really cool place. Checked it out. Moved down here by myself. I was 24 years old. Moved right into Riverside, which is way better now than it was in 2004. So started working for Riley just because I needed a job and I wanted to move here, and I really like real estate a lot. So I just started learning the industry from him. I was kind of like his legal secretary at the time, just doing small things. He had just started, he didn't have too much business, but then of course, as you know, in 2004, that bubble started happening. So we
Right.
had this huge, were completely slammed, just, learned a lot on my feet, just like, here's what you have to do. This is what you need to do. What is title insurance, everything. And I mean, honestly, when I first started with him, I'd never closed on a home. My parents are still living in the home that they bought almost 50 years ago. So I'd never even really been a part of a real estate transaction, and just kind of learned it from the ground up. I've always thought it's cool. Like, one, you're helping people find something that they love. It's like probably the biggest purchase they're ever going to do. They're moving their family in there to a place that they're going to live and call their home. And then also, like, real estate agents, I always just got along really well with them. I try to go above and beyond in everything that I do. And so it found out, like, I've made a lot of really great friends too in industry. So then pretty much, we, after the bubble, which we were super slammed in, and then the market crashed, we kind of bare bones it, and Riley and I were kind of back working, just he and I together, and we started doing short sales. So we did the whole short sale thing. I remember my very first short sale. The agents brought us 3 contracts, and they're like, "Hey, we have this property that's going to be a short sale. Here are all 3 of the contracts." So they had 3 offers, and basically you would submit them by fax to the short sale lender, who I think it was like Chase or something like that at the time. And then they would review them and tell you which one the seller could sign, basically, or could accept.
Right.
And it was a very back and forth. So after like the 1 or 2, I was told, Riley, I'm like, I can't do this. This is just too much. I can't do all of it. So we ended up hiring 2 women who basically negotiated. They sat at home and negotiated short sales.
Are
That
you
was
still
their.
are you still doing the short sales today?
Yeah, we do them some, not as much. They're not my favorite, and we don't have those 2 women anymore. So it's like, when I have to go to one of our closing attorney teams and say, like, "Hey, here's a short sale," they're like, "What do I do?" That kind of thing. So it's we do them, we just don't do them a lot, and
Right.
we're kind of okay with that. We
So,
hope that, so
like, let's back up a minute.
yeah,
So you actually went to school. You said communications.
yeah, broadcast news.
Okay, very interesting. And
Yeah.
so you like how did that kind of fit into real estate for you? Because that's like going from
Yeah.
showtime to kind of just, being behind the desk or actually meeting a lot of people too and realtors.
Right. Right. Well, I think for me, like, so I love sports, and I wanted to be like the sports broadcaster. But then as I got into it, I also kind of wanted a family, and I'm from a really small town, and I don't know, I just became really hard for me to figure out how I was going to make that work. It was like I'm not sure that that was the right choice for me, but I don't mind being in front of people. I'm a real people person. So when I moved here, well, actually, I took two tests coming out of college, like the career placement test, and both of them said I should be a real estate agent.
Oh,
So,
wow.
which I thought was kind of funny, but as someone who's 24 and I needed an income going into real estate where I was just like I was having to get commission, then it was impossible for me to do that on my own. I didn't have the just limited income coming in. I needed a salary. I needed to take home a check every 2 weeks or whatever it may be.
Right.
So, and I started working with Riley. It was like, oh, well, this is fun. And then I just kind of learned it from the ground up. And I honestly feel like I just really enjoy it. I enjoy the people. I'm a real people person. I can talk to anyone. And I mean, part of it too is like you get to this end result, this end goal, and like, and also with title insurances, I've always explained to people, it's kind of like this is your roadmap, like of
Right.
how you get to the end of your closing. And
We'll
it's
we'll
just,
talk about that because
yeah,
that is a definite big point for me. And you and I have talked about that at length about commitments and title searches and all of that stuff. So we will dive into that. But what you're kind of getting at is that background that you had with the communications and broadcasting almost it's still you're with people all the time. You are a people person.
yeah.
You're at many of the events and that in real estate, it sounds like that was a career destined for you, something that was going to happen at some point. And then you dive in 2004, and then only 3 to 4 years later, everything just goes down.
Yeah.
And so how did that happen for you? Because I think another question we'll have it after that is you saw a big crash in '08, and yeah, there were short sales. And then 2020 hits with the COVID and everybody's backing out of contracts. So
Yeah.
it almost could have looked like deja vu for you because you've
Right.
seen the up, you saw the down, you saw the resurgence, and then you saw the absolute mayhem that happened in March. So, what was that time like from '05 to '09?
Well, it was scary. It was, nerve wracking where you were like, closing stuff like back to back to back, um, just over and over and over again. And, it was like a never ending stop. And then all of a sudden to have like, I think Riley, one of Riley's favorite stories is to say like in February of, um, the year like 2000 and maybe 9 or 10, I can't remember. We had one closing that month. I mean, like, that's
How do you
just
survive from that? I
exactly.
mean,
Luckily, it was just he and I, and that's actually when we moved into our Riverside office because there's a third floor, and that's where I am right now. We're back here, like we have the whole building now, not just the third floor. And so to go from that, I mean, it was a slow hill, like it was a slow battle to get back up the hill. Like you just keep closing stuff, and the short sales did help. I mean, that was what people were doing, and that's where the business was, and that's one of the reasons we chose it. Not because obviously because we enjoyed it. It wasn't, nobody wants a closing to take 4 months, 5 months, just because
right.
you're going forth arguing with a lender over like this is what the market is telling us right now, not what you think you're going to get. But I just feel like um, it just it's one of those things where we came back and the market definitely got better and better. But then when COVID hit, it was we were actually ready to hire about two more closing attorneys at the first of last year, and then March came around. We were looking, and it was like, okay, I am nervous. Like Riley and I both went through that. And it's like, the worst thing to do is have to lay people off. And we didn't want to have to do that. And so, I think it was, one of those things where it's like, okay, let's take a backup because if people are scared to buy, like what is going to happen? I mean, it's a little bit different than, back when after the bubble pop, just with it's COVID is different from actually like a mortgage crisis, but
Right.
still similar.
You know, the vibe I get from what you're telling me is you went from having just started being in title and doing the title work in '04 to '08, all that happened. And it's like you came into the leadership role because you are CEO of J. Riley. So it's like you came into a leadership role. And when that happened with COVID, it's almost like you guided the ship at that point with Jay Riley there, but you were kind of, you were looking to hire, looking to continue expanding, but then
Right.
you had to almost shift the strategy of what you did when it came to business and it came to how do we deal with the realtors and and escrow and contracts falling through. I mean, there's so many different
Yeah.
things because title is not just title. I mean, you could be an escrow company and hold the money, the binders and deposits
Right.
and all that stuff. So it's like, now what do you do? And then they were coming out with different provisions, and COVID-19 NEFAR
Right.
things were coming out. So when that all happened, business wise and title wise, what was going through your mind that, like, I think it was March 18th
Yeah.
when the mayhem truly broke loose? Because even on my end, I was working on several probates, and all of a sudden people said, yeah, there's no closing right now. The hedge funds are backing down. Everybody's kind of waiting right now. And then there
Hmm.
was a real dry period, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did that work out for you?
So I think that when it first happened, I was like, okay, how my mind was just like, what are we going to do? Because one, we need to be an essential service, because at one point it was like, if they close us down, like what are we going to do? And all that whole in January, that remote online notarization came out, and we hurriedly, actually before even that happened, we hurriedly got almost all of our closers and closing attorneys like set up to do Ron. We have a platform ready, and then none of the lenders accepted. And even if it's a seller signing, they don't accept the deed signed by remote online notarization. So it's
Wow.
like, that was kind of pointless. I mean, I think it is in the future coming down, but so it's like, well, how can we continue to stay in business? So I was just like racking my brain and thinking. And then my first thought was, we obviously, we have to keep our office minimal, like if people can work from home, we had to set them up to work from home. The other thought was, I thought about like our Riverside office is an old house. So we have a parking lot in the back end that has two driveways. And so it's a U, so you can drive around.
Right.
And I told Riley, I said, hey, what if we did drive-through closings? And he was like, it's a thought. It's a thought. And I was like, well, I just think that with Riverside, at the time, my office was right there where the window is. And so I said, I can get the window open. People can drive up to my window. We hand them the documents out the door, out the window. And he was like, okay. So then about a couple of days went by, and he's like, I love the idea. Let's do it. So we immediately got everything we could do. We blasted it out there. We could do it. And it was a hit, especially right there. Actually, I did one today. It's not as, now people are more comfortable coming inside. They wear their masks and stuff. But at the time, it was great for people. And then we also have people who are kind of getting over it, and they want to do that. Or, one, it works out well for people who are handicapped and can't
Right.
really like, go upstairs, or, things like that. So it's actually kind of like something that started with COVID, and that was one of the main ways we had to deal with it. That I think is going to definitely stick around. I mean,
That's fantastic. Like you said,
yeah,
I mean, there's certain people that it makes it very difficult for them to, get out of the car, or maybe they just don't have the time, or that's where they feel comfortable doing it. And COVID was the catalyst to all of this occurring and unraveling, because even for court, we were going in on 5-minute things, 5-minute things, and we travel an
yeah,
hour, do the 5 minutes, travel back. But for you, it's kind of that same feeling. It's like, you were maybe thinking about that idea of the curbside before, and then you did
right,
it and you shifted the strategy, and now you're implementing that basically now and forever. And I remember when Taylor had posted a picture of her like putting out the documents out the window and
yeah,
somebody literally rolling by. And I thought that was ingenious as well when I saw that. I mean, you have to come up with creative things. And that's kudos to Jay Riley for doing that, because I think that people really were hesitant, and you found a way, Leah, to change it and to modify and keep the business going. So
Yeah.
very, very different as a, because you're not just an employee, you are a leader in that company. And I think people are always, they're following you. They're
Yeah.
following the lead.
Right. Yeah. And you just have to, you can't cause panic. I mean, it is scary. It's scary times. I've never been through a pandemic, but we have to like think clearly and just, keep calm. That was my whole thing is like, we're going to get through this. We'll be fine. Like I've been through something similar as far as like the market, not necessarily like health related, but you have to think about it clearly. And like, you can't be, I can't be going crazy because they're going to see me doing that. And that's kind of one of the things that I always remember.
Yeah, you have these moments where these things help build you, make you stronger, and the next time it happens, you're going to be thinking on your feet again. And again, the whole thing of Zoom and all this technology has played a role. Talk to us a little bit about ROM because you mentioned it. I've heard a little bit about it. I think I
Yeah.
made a post like a year ago and it was like ROM's happening, but it's like
Yeah.
it's really not happening because
Yeah.
lenders aren't really doing it, right? So it's great in theory, but
Mhm.
but the mortgage lenders are kind of iffy about it. And I think it's fantastic because if
Yeah.
people are just like now, this is a perfect example of why. And eventually e-wills will be a thing, but that's still iffy on its own.
Right.
Talk to us about ROM. Are you all doing it or do you have access to it? So how does that differentiate you from the other title companies? What's the access?
So we do have access to it. We actually have all of our closing attorneys and closers are like certified. We have our RON certification. You had to take like a little online class, and you had to up your bond and stuff. It's not hard to get. I mean, any company or any notary can get it, and most people, I think, if you don't have it, probably should get it because I think it's definitely coming. It's just taking a little bit more time. It's basic. So the way it is for our underwriters, they require us right now currently to use only certain companies. Like Notary Cam is one example. And if we don't use those companies, they won't insure it. So that's like a platform that you go through. So right now, most of our stuff, the only thing we really use it for is for seller like signings. If it's a cash deal, because you don't have a lender saying yes or no, you can do those. We actually just did one on Friday, and you do it through Notary Cam. So they administer it. It's their notary that does it. Now we can do that and on our own, but it has to be through their platform still. Like it can't just be us. Like it's not as easy as people think it is because it's not like you're FaceTiming someone and then I'm looking at it and I'm going to notarize your signature. It is not like that. It has to be all online. You have to have a camera with the notary has to see the people have to be there with the witness. Like we're normally on the call as well. And then it's a full certification thing and it has to be certified properly. And then we get the documents back so that from the company. So we still use the platform, even if we're the notary, we still use their platform because they are the ones that our underwriters will allow. But it's very infrequent. We just had one where we tried to do it with a guy that was out and is not going to be back for a while. And the lender said, no way, we won't allow the deed to be done by remote online notarization. But I do think that honestly, it is something in the future that is coming when people get more used to it and becomes even easier to use it and you're going to see it. It's going to happen. And so that's kind of why we went ahead and rushed and got it done and then did the research to get the companies that are involved. So it is something that we offer. It's just not very common right now because there's not a lot of cash deals.
Oh, yeah, I hear you because I think it's going to eventually be one of those big things that everyone's going to
Yeah.
be looking for. Like, I wish in the probate world that it was even more accessible than it even is now, because you may have people that are out of
Yeah.
state or you may have people that are in state. And I remember during the pandemic that some people had problems getting into banks and traveling. So some of the same and similar things. You brought up an interesting point that underwriters are more willing to deal with them now. You would think of anybody in the whole
Yeah.
transaction, they would be the ones to say, "Yeah, we don't want to do it," because that's what usually happens with underwriters,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
they are always taking on risk and money because that's what's always involved is risk and money, and they want to make
Right.
sure that everything's going to go smoothly. So in the world of underwriting, so this is where things get a little interesting with title. In the
Yeah.
world with underwriting, what do you see on your end that you wish a lot of us saw on our end? For example, a lot of the inner workings of what the underwriters are always looking for, because when you have buyer and seller, nobody knows what underwriting is. It's
Right.
just a word that's communicated in email. It's just a thing. Oh, we got to go to underwriting. We got to go to underwriting. Tell us a little bit about the inner workings of underwriting as the CEO of the title company, because
Yeah.
I always want things approved by underwriting before something's done, so we know we can close on a transaction. What's the story?
So, I mean, the main thing is like, you know, it's like what I tell people, even with like your homeowner's insurance, every company can be slightly different. So what one company will say, okay, we're willing to take that risk. The other company is like, no way, we're not willing to do that. And it's like the same thing for us too. It's like, we always defer to our underwriters because those are the people that are actually issuing the title insurance. We're the signing off on it, but they're the ones who do the research and are willing to, if a claim comes back, that's where we're going. But that happens very infrequently, but you also have to understand that like from a standpoint, from a buyer seller, I know as like a real estate agent or a lender, you're like, we really want to get this closed. We need this. Well, there's still that IRS lien out there, well, we promised we paid it, but that's the thing is I tell people it's like the underwriter has to say, okay, if for some reason it wasn't paid or they come back and want more money, then we've taken that risk and now we've closed the transaction and where are we going to go? Like we're now have a claim. And so that's kind of what the underwriters, when I say, tell people like, let's go ahead and run a title search. Let's see what's out there. Then we know what we have to deal with. And that's where I tell like a lot of agents, like if you're going into a listing and you think that there might be a problem, probate, a lien on there, anything that you think is abnormal, it never hurts to have us to go ahead and run that title search because the sooner the more time you have to resolve that problem. And that's kind of like what I tell a lot of people. And a lot of times, we know our underwriters really well. We can talk to them. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of a risk factor. Like how big of a risk are we and our underwriters willing to take? And, we want to do the right thing. And I know they do too. And you know, um, I think that's the main thing is I tell people it's the risk factor when it comes to that.
Yeah, because they don't want to take the hit when an error, random error comes
Right.
back and says, "Wait a second, I had claim to a 1/8 of the property," and you're like, "Who are you?" Uh, and
Yes.
the and the underwriters going, "We look for everybody. We check. We do. I think I call it like it's almost a forensic examination of title, right? They're going in the back chain. They're looking at everything. So we see it from your end, and I think what we see from my perspective or as buyer and seller is a lot of the communication with title companies and understanding a lot of this stuff. I think it goes to communication and educating, that gets really confusing because everybody wants to close. They want to do it yesterday. They want it done. What steps do you take to be the ultimate communicator with explaining these things to sellers, buyers, their agents, building the rapport and building that trust with everybody? That's super important. I love communication, and I
Yeah.
know other people do. What steps are you taking to make sure that happens?
Well, I mean, one of our main focuses as a company and always has been is customer service. And I tell people like agents, I'm like, that is extremely important to us. Yeah, yes, we have to do a good job, but like we need to communicate with you and you need to feel like that, your file is important because it is important no matter how busy we are. I think that, just for us, it's like, how, if we can stay one step ahead of them and already provide this communication to them, like provide the title. And if you think if there's an issue, tell them about it up front. Don't wait until the end because that's where you run into problems and that's where people get frustrated. So I'm always telling our closers and our closing attorneys, I'm like, you have to manage expectations. Like if you can't manage those expectations, then that's when you get to the closing table and someone's like, why am I paying this for this? Or why is this an issue? They don't understand it. So I think for us, it's like a lot of times we send out title commitments and people come back and say, like, why did you send this to me? And we're like, well, you just, some people love looking at them. And, I would think that as an agent, it would be a really helpful for you because then if your seller comes back and says, hey, Leah over at J. Riley just called me and told me that I have to sign this affidavit, like, why? Then you would say, oh, well, in the title, it says that you have a name affidavit or a continuous marriage affidavit, anything like that. And so, I try to educate the agents, and also we do classes. And I always say, I know that the title commitment is not something that you're worried about, but it never hurts to understand the survey and the title as well, just like being fully knowledgeable. So we send those out. We try to send out preliminary closing statements. The customer service is like top priority for us. And, it's been something from the very beginning. And it's like, I always want to educate the agents too. It's like, this is the best thing you can do for yourself.
No doubt. I think customer service is key. Yeah, you build your clientele, you get your base, but you have to have the communication and building and explaining things, just like the commitment. I appreciate that from you, Leah, is that
Right.
you understand that we want to know what's going on up front, whether attorney, whether buyer, seller, we want to know, is this thing happening? How many do we have to do? What does the deed chain look like? What is the legal description correct? Is everything correct? I mean, there's
Right.
so many important things that if investors and realtors that are listening to this, whenever you get some kind of transaction, a title search, well, I prefer title commitment, but those are tools that are extremely important to know. Bottom line, what do you need to do to close? What has to happen? Without it, you won't know, and it's a lot of guessing games, and you never know what an underwriter's thinking. Because Leah, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, and this is actually a good conversation with you, is
Yeah.
it, underwriters have a lot of issues with power of attorneys.
Right.
Whether it's the power of attorney that's going to be used for the transaction, or it was a power of attorney that was used to transfer title from a prior deed, and the person that signed it as POA, they either did it to themselves or they did it to somebody else, and then they come back later and say, wait, we did this already, and my response to that, I don't do title like you do, you see this more often, is underwriting doesn't like it. They don't like power of attorneys. What's the deal?
I think it's just the whole fact of like, it's that risk factor of someone coming back and saying, like, wait a minute, I didn't mean for them to sell my property. And it has to be extremely specific, it has to have a notary and two witnesses, and they cannot be related to you. I get that all the time. It's like, well, my husband, is my witness. Yes, but he's also on title. Like, you can't, it's too self-serving. I think that's where they're seeing it is. And so, like, when someone says, hey, they call us and they say, hey, I'm going to be out of town. My husband's going to be out of town for closing. He's just going to come by and sign a power of attorney, and I'll sign the deed for them. And I always tell people, like, then just have him sign the deed. He's coming by to sign the power of attorney, have him sign the deed, and then they can sign all the supplemental. I think it just looks suspicious, and it's risky. It comes down to that whole risk factor again. It's like, and then, you have to also record an affidavit now with power of attorneys, because to say that they're still in full force and effect. And if anything's wrong with them, there is a lot more that goes into it. And then I also get this question a lot, even from my office. We've learned this is, some power of attorneys are for individuals. You can't use them for a PR. You can't use them for a trust. You can't use them for an LLC. It's a completely different thing. So I get that all the time as someone calls in, they own it in the LLC, but they're not going to be here. So they're going to have their spouse sign as a POA. I'm like, no, they can't. They're a manager of the LLC. You can't assign a power of attorney. And you also can't assign a power of attorney for a power of attorney. We've had that before where they're like, well, the power of attorney's out of town, so he signed another power of attorney. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like, they're just they can be very risky if they're not done properly. And I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it so many times where, and the problem is the sellers, they need to come to terms with when that actually happens. What
Mhm.
happens now is that maybe it's a probate, maybe they have to redo the deed, right? Like
Right.
re-execute the deed. And I'm sure that causes a lot of issues too,
Yeah.
because now, is the person that had signed it mentally incompetent? Are they deceased? Are they missing? Like, now you have another issue of solving problems. So in the world of title, and I'm sure you're going to share some crazy story, wild, hardest thing that you've ever done before. What would you say? And if probate's the answer, we could talk
Yeah.
about it. If probate's the answer, what is one of the biggest deal killers title wise that you find in the office that, oh, that happens, totally kill the deal? Like, is it judgments? Is it the appraisal? Is it um, uh, the lender not being able to do the loan? What do you see as the biggest deal killer?
Well, someone not getting a loan obviously is a huge deal killer because most people don't have like a backup plan of, oh, my such and such can just loan me the money. But that's, that's more of a real estate thing. It's not really a problem with title. From a titles perspective, I think a lot of it is like judgments and liens, or they took out a home equity line of credit that they forgot about it. Oh, wait a minute, I do owe that $25,000. Or in some of these, back when the market crashed, people were getting those like save our home loan type things. And I think some people don't understand it. Like, you pay those back. Like, they don't just go away.
Right.
The bond programs, there's so many different ones. And so you have to, like, when you're signing up for those. So that would be, I think, a big killer, is that those liens and judgments, or even IRS tax liens that, people think just are going to go away, or they don't attach. And they do. I'm not a bankruptcy attorney or a tax attorney. I'm not an attorney, but those kinds of things that people don't think about, specifically if someone goes through bankruptcy. I think, that might be something they're like, oh, that was all taken care of, but that's not necessarily how it works. And I think that's the biggest title killer, because even if someone's passed away and, we have to get their death certificate, and it takes a little longer, most people are willing, if they want the home and the seller's calm about it, that they'll wait it out, and then we can call someone to rush it through really quickly. But it's those liens that and judgments that are on the property that they owe, and the purchase price is just not going to cover them.
Yeah, and Leah wanted to make a point of it backstage. She's not an attorney, but let me tell you, she is super title. She is a super title CEO. But yeah, of course, check with all those other people on things like bankruptcy. But she knows a lot about this stuff. Now, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought up judgments and liens. Whether it's tax deeds, and that's a whole other thing where they're trying to get the rebate program for nuisance liens and back taxes. But have you seen situations that I've seen recently where the judgment is way higher than the contract price, and there's negotiation that has to happen, and payoffs, and how do you get creative on a title end when you get those judgments that are just really high? Or like, what are you explaining to sellers, or how do you solve those problems?
Right. Well, I think mainly, like, a lot of them, especially some, like when they're recorded in the courts, I found that, like, it's a huge, it could be like a huge amount. Plus it'll have like a daily interest of like $250 per day. And it's been like 3 years, and you're like, oh my gosh, the price at that is so much. But a lot of those things are negotiable. Like the nuisance liens with the city, or sometimes like credit card companies or things like that. So we try to call ourselves and negotiate some of them. A lot of them will not talk to us because we have to have a third party authorization, or they want the borrower or the lien holder themselves to call in. And, we try to be creative. We try to help out as much as possible. I understand that, like, a lot of them are just like, what am I going to do? But I think the biggest take I have seen from that is just like giving them some guidance. Like, okay, I've dealt with the city for 17 years. Here's who you need to call. This is what you need to do. And like, they're going to most likely work with you, but it's just that point of like being able to be there and help the people, whether it's helping the agents or helping the client, telling them what they need to do, or just really doing it for them. Like, that's been the biggest. I mean, and I've navigated my way through so many of those things that I kind of have a lot of contacts through that way. So I kind of know who to call, and like, I've done this before. it I'm not promising that it'll work, but this is what we've done in the past that has worked.
Well, anybody listening knows that Leah has the keys to the door for the judgment liens and all
I,
those interesting
I,
things.
but yeah, they're pretty swamped down there right now. I'll give them that.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it's hard to get a hold of even anybody downtown right now.
Yeah.
It's just absolute lunacy. So now that I kind of have an idea that maybe the judgments liens is the trickier issue of all of title,
Yeah.
tell me what your thoughts are on probate. I don't think we can get off the show without talking about that.
No.
And
That's great.
actually, it's almost, yeah, part one, part two. Number two is, and it kind of fits in because we've seen a deal where it was a trust situation where, I explain to people in my seminars and stuff that I do, trusts avoid probate. Poorly drafted trusts do not avoid a title issue wherein thing called a trust administration thingy has to happen. And then you're explaining it to everybody and they're like, whoa, we did our trust. We did
Right.
everything. What are you talking about? We'll talk about that. And I just wanted to mention that because I'm sure that'll come up at some point. But talk to us about the world of probate from Leah's perspective. Uh,
Yeah.
Give it to us.
So, I mean, all that I really know about probate, I've just kind of learned from like real estate transactions. So it's like you get your title back, and it has, Jane Smith as your seller, but the contract now has Dorothy Smith, and we're like, okay, this is interesting. So when we asked, they're like, oh, Jane passed away, and now the property's Dorothy's. I'm like, well, how did the property get to Dorothy? So that's when a lot of time, that's kind of how I've learned it. I actually learned it the hard way a few times, and it's mainly when, at that point we're like, okay, the property was not her homestead. This has got to go through probate. And then they're like, well, what does that mean? And so I'll refer them to a probate attorney because we don't handle probate in-house at all. And I think mainly it's just that people don't understand that, whether they have a will or they don't have a will, why do I have to do this? Why can't you do it? Or why does that matter? This is what her will says. It says it's going to, Dorothy. Then why do I have to get the court? And so I think it's like, for me, it's been guiding the people through the process of like, this is the reason you need this. And then with trust, it's like, it's all how it's like you said, it's and how it's set up. Like, is it just one trustee or is it two co-trustees? Who's the successor trustee? And like, have all these boxes been checked for the successor trustee to be able to sign the paperwork? And I think that that's what people don't understand when they set up like the estates and when they set up the trust is like, it's just not as easy as like signing a piece of paper saying that he's your trustee and then he can do everything. It's just not. And we have to review the trust documents because just because you say, Al, you're like, I am the trustee and I'm going to sign everything. But like, is that what your trust agreement says? What if it says that, two parties have to sign off? Like we have to review all those things, and people can get a little, I understand it's personal information. I'm not asking you to give off, but and the other thing that I see hugely with like a lot of probate things with trust and estates is for auditing purposes, whoever is on title is who our proceeds have to go to. So if you say like, oh, well, it's the, such and such of the 1, 2, 3, 4 trust, then that check needs to go to the 1, 2, 3, 4 trust, not the individual. And we get a lot of pushback for that because it's like, well, I'm the trustee, but I understand that, but you took all this time to set your trust up or put this into an estate, then you have to set up a bank account for that.
Right. Yeah, that's something that as we all do work and as we all grow, we always realize all those little nuances, and that's a big nuance. That is something I've gotten to discuss more and more. Is that okay? If it's non-homestead and great, you are the PR. You really have to do any PRs even in title worlds, but if there has to be a personal representative and they get the money, there has to be a state account open. It's not just going to be distributed directly to everybody, because what if there's the creditor periods? What if things are happening in the probate that need to be done? But yeah, you're right. Those little nuances, it takes a level of explaining and getting to the next point about what is going on in the probate. So in the world of wackadoodle probates, have you noticed that it's been basically a smooth process for you all, or are there crazy ones that you've seen that they're all over the place? It shut the deal down, and then you're thinking, oh, this probate thing again.
No, actually, like not anymore. At the beginning, yes, I felt like, and I think that was partly me not knowing enough about it. But the more I've done it, and the more I understand it, and I can explain it to people, I just had one the other day, and I was just like, it's not the end of the world. Like we could probably push this through fairly quickly. It's a simple estate. Like there's not a lot. There's one child involved, like not even a minor, but it was, and I think that there used to be some, and then I did one recently that had like a large number of sellers in an estate, so you were dealing with like multiple people all over, and that one was interesting because we ended up doing like multiple probates for like one estate or one
Wow.
product that was through different estates. And so I feel like that it doesn't really make me nervous anymore, and I know people that I can call and who will do it do a good job on that. So, no, I can't think of anything that's really like totally killed the deal. The only thing I can say is that it does take longer sometimes when, you're going to have to go through the creditor period and they don't want to close before that is, or, some of them like, well, we have to find this person. We don't know where they are in order to like send them notice. And so that can take, they give them 30 days or whatever, however many days it is. And so that's where it becomes it's very similar to a short sale thing where you're just managing their expectations. Like we're trying every day, we have to wait on this period to go through. And so until then, but I haven't seen any like totally kill a deal in a good amount of time.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear that. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's a totally different niche, and it's just a different one that people don't expect because the deed's messed up, or
Yeah.
somebody didn't do the deed right. Because I'm sure you see so many title commitments with supporting documentation where you see the actual person that conveyed it prepared the deed. It's like so many people like doing their
Yes.
own deeds, and that causes a problem too.
Oh,
Right?
yes, definitely. I would tell someone, unless you really know what you're doing, I would not prepare a deed yourself, because if you do and you do it wrong, it's going to have to be redone and it could be years later. And then, where's that person? I
Right.
hope they're still alive. And if not, then that might even be another whole issue.
Right, and that's a whole other problem, and it's like you're not doing surgery on yourself. Why would you do your deed yourself?
Exactly.
And that's going to cause so many issues. So Leah, in the world of niches and networking, if you're not really doing the short sales anymore, what are you all focusing primarily on at J. Riley? Is it just the single families? Is it commercial land? What are you all focusing on big time? Because kudos to Taylor, she's always out there marketing,
Yeah.
and she's always shaking hands and creating relationships. So I mean, you all have a goal and an end mean to find those projects, those deals. What are you all kind of tackling in that niche market?
I mean, I really think it's just the residential, like single family homes. Like we do a little bit of commercial, we dabble here and there. We do have one small build, like a couple of small builders that we work with. So we're not doing any huge construction, but it's really the residential closings. And, our thing is customer service. And so we really are honing in on that and making sure that we're continuing to do that because we want to keep growing. We like growing. I mean, if you're not growing, you're dying in a way. So I feel that, that's really our niche is that, customer service, place where you come here and it's like, even though we're growing and we're larger, we're still a small business. I think that that's our main thing. We're not like looking to get into any big commercial projects or anything like that. We like the residential. We like we do have a Spanish speaking attorney now. So we
Oh,
um,
well,
have the
that's good for
ability.
everybody to know.
Yeah.
That's a different vibe because
Yeah.
you'll have a lot of people from either Orlando or from
Right.
out of state that move to Florida, and so their primary language is Spanish. And so look at that. Now you have a new option
Right.
there for people that are out of country.
Yeah, so that's been nice, and she's still in training now, but she's doing a great job. And really, it's just we just want to continue to get out there and meet people and grow.
Oh no, that's amazing. I mean, the idea of you and Taylor always being at the NEFAR meetings, even before COVID hit. I remember you were all there at the
Yeah,
trainings, and I remember you're all sitting there, so you're always out there. What has been one of the benefits to you of the real estate community that has like been just a big influence for Jay Riley and you, like networking with people? What is that benefit?
I think it's just like I don't know. For me, I tell when I'm talking to people here, I'm like, if you go to a restaurant and you people know your name and they know you and they recognize you, like I always want to go back to the same coffee shop because they know me and they know my name and I feel comfortable there. And even if I don't need coffee, I'll still go to that coffee shop just because
Right.
and it's like part of my routine. And I think that, that's the benefit of the networking is like you make friends and you make acquaintances, and it's not just a place that I send my customers. It's somewhere that you feel comfortable. And then if you do have a problem or praise, hopefully you call us and you're like, thank you for making this simple, and thank you for making me look good, because that's our whole thing. It's like, we want to make our clients look good. We want to do a good job so that they want to come back and see us, or they Leah with J. Riley did a great job for me. I highly recommend her. And, who doesn't want that?
Oh, absolutely. With the customer service you're providing, it's amazing. And everybody always wants to, when you're in the community and you're always mingling and networking, and people want to know what you do,
Right.
everybody's always asking, like, how quick, how fast, what are all those in the title world? Because I don't know, when you were saying all that, I was thinking the words closing costs and fees and everything. Everyone's it's good to mingle and network with the community, but when it comes down to it, you have all of these things in the title world that it's almost like just always dealing with different personalities and wants and what people are looking for. And I don't know, just the real estate world is so unique, right? So many different parts, so many different people, so many different lenders, and you have to work with everyone, right? Like you're working not just with realtors, you're working with the mortgage companies.
Right.
And I mean, it's just how are you doing all, like, how do you do all of that stuff, Leah? It's amazing.
It's just like a day-to-day thing. It's just like, all the files are very similar, but everyone is different. You may have a lender that's just on top of it and gets it done. And then you have a lender who's really dragging behind, but then I also know that it's not necessarily always the lender's fault. Like if the client's not getting them the documentation, how can they move it through faster? And so it's kind of having that like full global look at things that helps me. And what I tell the other people is like, we're having to manage these people's expectations. So if, and that's, it's a very similar to a real estate agent. It's like they're managing their clients' expectations, who we also talk to, but then we have to manage their expectations so that they can do the job that they want to do. And it's just like the lenders, everybody's very busy right now. And so right now has been a little bit of it's been difficult for everybody, because the title companies are behind on their title searches just because they've gotten so many. It's just, and I think that's what I try to tell people is like, we're getting them over as quickly as we can, but at some point I can't make them search the title any faster. I can't make the lender send me the documents that are not ready any faster. Like it is kind of what it is. And I think that we're all kind of learning that, because even the real estate agents are swamped.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like you deal with so many different personalities and so
Yeah.
many different industries, and it's like you have to balance all of that stuff. And it kind of falls on the title, because at the end of the day, it's where the checks are cut, where the keys
Right.
are, handed over. It's like, you know, you're out there, but at the same time, you're balancing all of that
Yeah.
personality and act out there.
It can be stressful at times, but I just, I try to take it for what it is. And then also remember that like, you can only do so much. That's the thing.
Right.
And that's what I tell here is like, we can't make the package come in, but we can manage the expectations of the agents and let them know that that's not happening.
Right. So,
Hmm.
I probably should have asked this in the beginning of the podcast session. Um, but it really dawned on me. You've been there almost 16, going on 17 years with Jay Riley,
Right.
this whole time. I have to know, it's very rare that people can last together sometimes that long. I don't know, husband and wife, right? Even that's trying sometimes for people that last that long. How have you created such a mutual partnership in growing together with this firm? I mean, yeah, he may have his name on it, but you've been there this whole time. Like, how is that glue stayed together? What is the tricks to building those great relationships and partnerships in the company?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, Riley is a great teacher. He's been a great boss. He's been a great leader. Very good business owner. He's always trying to learn and grow. And I think the main thing is that he's always done that for me and all of his other employees. It's not just a job where you come in and you like punch your card. That's how I learned what I did, because he took the time to teach me and learn. And that's kind of what, that's kind of our business model. It's not just about coming in and like checking the boxes. I think for him, it's just, I was here. I worked hard. I wanted to learn the business, and it's more like a family. It's just one of those things where, I don't know. I was not necessarily a good business leader when I came, because I had really no experience. I'd always worked for someone else. And for him, when you find someone or a place that they have your best interests at heart as well, and they want you to do well, that's kind of what it is. Because I've been here pretty much the whole time. I did take a small break after I had my second child, but I still was here, like would do some closings here and there. And so I never really, was away from it. And when I came back full time, I've never looked back. It's just been one of those things where it's like, I always wanted to continue to learn and grow. And I knew that was always there working here.
But it's just amazing because you have been there that long. I mean, somebody being at
Yeah.
a company that long, obviously there is good chemistry there. There's good working relationships there that are very important to maintain. And now that you are CEO, you have the employees to train and to work with it. It's just there's such a juggling act in what you do, and that's why I called you, super
Oh,
title in the world, the super title, super mom. You're super awesome, Leah, and
thank
it's
you.
amazing to hear all of these things from your perspective, because you're behind the computer and then you're networking. So, and we
Yeah.
haven't been able to network at all, but in the point of, you are always there. You have always been there. Since I've met you, you are always on top of things. You're responsive, and that says a lot about you and your character. Because we always look for title companies that they want to work with others, but are also timely, responsive,
Right.
communicate, and the customer service that you show is just so unique. So, thanks so much for being with me today.
Yeah. Thanks for
So,
having.
yeah, so definitely let others know, like, who are you looking for, or who are you looking to connect with that can reach out to you whenever they listen to this and see this? What kind of, is it investors, realtors, title, or not title, but lenders, who are you looking for?
Really, agents and lenders. We love, home builders, anyone that we can help. I mean, whether it be new or seasoned agents. Like, I love new agents because I can teach them. I can help guide them and help them grow. I'm always, I'm not afraid to do that by any means. But really, anyone, like, I mean, our story is just like, we want to be here for you when you need help, whether it be on a deal that we're closing for you or when you have somewhere else. And I think that's the thing. It's like agents, lenders, if you're not happy where you are and and you're looking for that customer service, I definitely think we can provide it.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, for any new realtors out there, look at that. What an
Yeah.
opportunity, not just at your brokerage and working with the broker associates. I don't even know how it really works. But for those that are out there that are really interested in this, look, you have Leah, who's willing to help guide that whole process. And what better benefit than to get the inside track of the world of title, right?
Right.
So they're getting that inside track, and then at least they know up front, like we all would like to know with title, what happens and what's the deal and how do we close this thing. So,
Yeah.
Leah, thank you so much. How do people get a hold of you?
They can call our office, 904-425-0040, or shoot me an email. It's Leah at jriley-law.com, or just reach out to Al. He knows how to get me to me.
That too. Yeah, definitely that as well. Yeah, we'll get you in touch with her. So, Leah, again, I know you're super swamped. We've been super swamped, and I'm so happy I got you on. This will be amazing for people to watch in the world of title and hearing what you have to say, because you're always out there, but people love hearing from you. You know, so many people in the community. So thank you again for coming on
Thank
my
you.
show. I loved it. I love talking to you.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, everybody, if you want more content like this, check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel. I have content on probate, quiet titles, partitions, and all things about this Al Nicoletti show with Leah Miller. There's going to be different podcasts that are going to be shown and posted. So make sure you check it out on the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel. And I will see you next time on the Al Nicoletti show. Take care.